Hi, my name's Mion, and my little sister smiled at me, smirked, as she pitched my $1 million AI idea like it was hers. She looked me in the eye and said, "What can you do?" She didn't know it was a trap. But the worst part, it wasn't just her. My family believed her, backed her. They cut me out and told me maybe I should just take a break from the house I helped build. They erased my name, but they didn't know. I left a mark they couldn't touch. Want to know what happened when the truth finally fought back? When I finally did? "What can you do?" she asked with that smirk I'll never forget. I stood in the back of the conference room, hidden in plain sight behind a cluster of minor investors. The air reeked of cologne, burned coffee, and artificial enthusiasm. Carrie was at the center, my little sister, draped in confidence that didn't belong to her. She was presenting the software I spent 2 years building, and no one in that room knew the truth. She called it Aegis. Clean name, powerful. It was mine. My throat tightened as she launched into her pitch. Slide after slide displayed algorithms I wrote, structures I designed, and a neural defense matrix I had perfected during 100 sleepless nights. She didn't just take the code. She took the vision, the essence, and wrapped it in her practiced charm. The audience leaned in, nodding along, impressed. I knew some of them, former colleagues, investors I'd met first, but I wasn't invited today. Carrie had told me the meeting was pushed, that she'd handle it this time. I believed her, partly because I wanted to, partly because I was exhausted. But when she looked right at me from across the room and whispered, "What can you do?" I stopped believing. I didn't react. I didn't storm out or make a scene. I watched. That smile of hers, curved, smug, detached, etched itself in my mind like a branding iron. The room erupted in applause as she wrapped up. Carrie accepted their praise like she'd earned every bit of it. And I just stood there, hands at my sides, body still, mind racing. They thought she was the architect, but I was the one who laid every brick. I walked out before they popped the champagne. The hallway felt longer than it ever had. By the time I reached the elevator, the hurt had calcified into something colder, something sharper. I pressed the lobby button and didn't blink once. Back in my apartment, I opened my terminal and ran the diagnostics. The system had deployed. My code was live, under Carrie's name. But something else had gone live too. Months ago, I had my doubts. She was always ambitious, opportunistic, slippery, so I built in a gate, a lock, buried beneath lines of obfuscated functions, hidden like a needle in a haystack of brilliance. Aegis wouldn't stay loyal to anyone. It would stay loyal to the creator. And that wasn't Carrie. I remembered the night I first showed her my prototype. We were sitting on my living room floor, drinking wine, talking about the future. I was excited. She was calculating. "I could never do what you do," she'd said, "but you could do something massive with it." And she meant every word, just not the way I heard them then. I didn't let her steal it. I let her think she could. That day she took the spotlight, but she also triggered something else. Something she didn't know was waiting for her. After I shut my laptop, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, letting the silence fold around me like armor. Around 6:30, I changed and drove across town to my parents' place. Dad had called earlier, saying Carrie was bringing over dinner to celebrate the milestone. I already knew what that meant. When I walked in, Carrie was already there. Perfect hair, perfect lies. She was setting plates on the table like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just erased me. Mom smiled at me, nervous. Dad poured himself a drink and asked Carrie how the pitch went, like I wasn't even in the room. "She nailed it," he said before she could answer. "That's my girl." Carrie gave me a glance that lasted less than a breath. Then she turned back to him. The investors were thrilled. I think they see real potential now. There it was. Now. As if I hadn't spent the last 18 months building every damn line of code. As if Carrie had dragged us all across the finish line with nothing but her grin and high heels. I sat down at the table without a word. I waited for Mom to say something, for Dad to ask how I was doing. No one did. Halfway through the meal, Dad raised his glass. "To the future of this family," he said, eyes only on Carrie. The room tilted slightly. My fork paused halfway to my mouth. That phrase, It wasn't a compliment, it was a line drawn, and I wasn't on his side of it. After dinner, Carrie followed me into the hallway as I grabbed my coat. "You seem tense," she said, low voice, sweetly venomous. "Something wrong?" I didn't answer. She leaned against the wall, arms folded. "Look, the way things happened, I know it's not ideal, but you weren't listed officially, and the investors needed one face. It just made more sense." I turned to her, forcing myself to stay calm. "You mean it was cleaner without me?" She didn't flinch. "Exactly." I should have screamed, should have thrown something, but all I did was nod. Once. Slowly. "Got it." I walked out before she could respond. Dad caught me just outside the door. His voice was low, like he didn't want Mom to hear. "Jan, this is hard for you, I get that. But Carrie's the one who gets things done. Maybe it's time you let her lead." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. His face told me he thought this was for the best. He thought I'd disappear quietly. They all did. They thought cutting me out would end the story. But they had no idea what I'd already put in place. I drove back through the city with the windows rolled up, the noise of traffic muffled behind glass. The engine hummed, but my mind was louder. By the time I reached my apartment and kicked off my shoes, the adrenaline had drained, leaving something quieter, something heavier. I curled up on the couch and opened an old photo folder on my phone. There we were, me and Carrie, on campus, 22 and full of foolish hope. Back then, she used to say we'd change the world together. I wanted to believe it. I think I still did, up until about a month ago. There was a night I remembered now, clearer than ever. She was sitting on my bed, balancing my old laptop on her knees, pretending not to understand the UI. "What do you usually use for passwords?" she'd asked. Innocent, casual, like it was just a sisterly question. "Usually something tied to the project," I'd said without thinking. "Concept name and a number." I didn't even look up when I said it. Now it makes my skin crawl. Not because it was clever, but because it was so easy. She didn't have to break in. I handed her the keys. And I wasn't the only one. Another memory surfaced. Sharper, shorter. Just a few weeks back, Mom and Carrie were in the kitchen while I worked in the next room. They thought I couldn't hear them over the blender. "She always picks things like Aegis Shield 123, Mom had said, laughing like it was cute. "Same structure every time. Mion's nothing if not predictable." Carrie didn't say anything, but I heard the pause. Mom never meant harm, but sometimes harm didn't need intention. It just needed access. I set the phone down, staring at the ceiling again. This wasn't one betrayal. It was dozens of moments I let slide, one after another. Carrie's flattery that always ended in her, "just checking my notes." Dad's dismissive nods. Mom's awkward silences whenever things got tense. I'd spent years head down in the work, writing code, iterating designs, dreaming of what came next. But I never thought to watch my back. I was too busy building to realize someone was stealing the bricks. Saying it out loud hurt less than I expected, because now I saw it all. I saw the pattern, the setup, the mistake. And this time, I wasn't going to be the one looking away. The problem wasn't just what they took, it was what they left behind. Doubt, silence, and a war I never asked for. The rest of the night passed in fragments, staring at the wall, replaying old conversations, tracing patterns I should have seen years ago. Around 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and pulled up the system logs again. My fingers hovered over the keyboard while I watched for anomalies I already knew were there. Footsteps behind me. I didn't look up. "Still awake?" It was Mom. She stepped into the room with that soft, hesitant tone she used when she didn't want to disturb but also didn't want to leave. "I'm checking something," I said. "It's important." She sat on the edge of the couch, watching me scroll through timestamps and IP logs. "What is all that?" "Proof that Carrie accessed my server weeks before the launch pitch." Her brow furrowed. "Are you sure?" "I'm not guessing. I'm reading access credentials." She looked away. I couldn't tell if she was processing or avoiding. Carrie always admired your work." I didn't respond. Silence said more than my voice ever could. Then she said almost too quietly, "You know, I think I might have mentioned your password habits once. I didn't mean anything by it. I was just joking around in the kitchen. My chest went still. She laughed, said she wouldn't even know where to start with your tech. I didn't think she was serious. I didn't know. I nodded, not for her sake, but for mine. She didn't do it to hurt me. But that didn't change that she had. Later that day, a former colleague forwarded me a screenshot, one of those back-channel investor chats. Carrie's name, her words, bold as ink. Mion's not in the best headspace right now. She's been erratic. We took over the project before it collapsed. So that was the strategy now. If you can't erase my work, discredit the one who made it. She's brilliant but unstable. I whispered the quote aloud, the bile rising behind every word. This wasn't just a lie. This was sabotage, personal, strategic. I tried setting a meeting with one of the firms I'd pitched to before Carrie stepped in. No response, not even a courtesy, "We'll circle back." Just ghosted. But I wasn't going to chase them. I wasn't going to beg. I still had access to the system. I still had every commit, every embedded marker, every version of Aegis in pre-launch logs. And now I had something new. I opened the shell terminal and began rewriting the monitoring protocol, quietly embedding a live feedback tracker that would log any unauthorized commands in real time. If they wanted to erase me, I'd make sure the system remembered everything they did, permanently. The next night, just after 10, a message popped up on my phone. It was Carrie. "I messed up. I didn't mean for things to go this far. Can we talk? Just us." I stared at the text for a full minute. Then I typed a simple reply. "Where?" She chose an old diner we used to visit after finals, back when we still laughed at the same things. I arrived first and sat by the window, coffee untouched in front of me. When she walked in, her smile was cautious, like someone who didn't know if the trap she'd set was still open or already closing in on her. "I know I crossed a line," she said, sliding into the booth. "I didn't mean to cut you out. It happened so fast. You know how these things go." I didn't blink. "You mean you cut me out before I could react? Let's call it what it is." She didn't deny it. There was a pause. Then she leaned in, voice quieter. "There's a problem with the system. During the investor demo simulation, something glitched. It's minor, but I can't fix it." I kept my face still. "I just need a tiny patch," she said. "It's from your old API. You'd know it better than anyone." I nodded slowly, then pulled out my phone and emailed her a snippet. It would fix the bug, just like she wanted. But it would also activate a buried trigger. One line of code she couldn't see, hidden in an innocent function call. "You'll be fine now," I said, finishing my coffee. "Unless, of course, you cross that line again." She tilted her head. "What line?" I stood. "You'll know it when you trip it." That night, I sent her a separate encrypted message. Short, direct, unmistakable. "Try anything else and the next failure won't be private. It'll be permanent. And public." No more meetings, no more conversations, no more mercy. She thought I'd broken. What she didn't see was that I'd just finished building the trap. By the time Carrie ran the new investor demo, my code had been live for 48 hours. She clicked launch, expecting applause. Instead, she got alarms. Within 10 minutes, Aegis began flagging phantom threats. Ports shut down. Logs exploded with unauthorized activity warnings. The interface froze. Investors started texting, some walking out mid-presentation. I watched from my apartment, phone buzzing with updates from old colleagues still on the inside. Carrie was scrambling, sweating through her blouse, begging the IT guy to roll back. But the system wouldn't budge. It wasn't broken. It was doing exactly what I told it to do. Later that night, I heard the knock. I didn't need to look through the peephole. I opened the door and found her standing there, hair frizzed, lipstick smeared, eyes wild. "You sabotaged the demo," she barked. "We lost 2 investors. You don't get to do that." I stayed quiet, stepping aside just enough for her to storm in. "I trusted you," she hissed. "You gave me bad code." "No," I said, walking to the table. I picked up a folder and handed it to her. "I gave you functional code. The system logged unauthorized creator override and followed protocol." She opened the folder, lines of logs, dates, times, her access, her edits, system warnings, my watermark. It's not about trust, Carrie. It's about authorship. You think this is going to hold up in court? I smiled. Already submitted to Thomas. Remember him? Our IP attorney from undergrad? I've got autosends in place. If anything happens to me or my name disappears again, the system releases everything. She froze. These are my terms, I said. 50% of all patents, public recognition, ethical board control, and 1 million in damages for breach. She laughed, short, bitter. You're blackmailing me. No, I'm enforcing boundaries. She stared, lips parted like she was about to fire back, but she didn't. She didn't back down, and neither did I. Only this time, it wouldn't stay between us. By the time the sun came up, the news had already spread. At 8:12 a.m., I got a text from Mom. Your father wants to talk. At 8:43, I stood in the kitchen across from the people who'd raised me. They didn't ask how I slept. They didn't ask how I was holding up. They just waited for me to sit down so they could deliver their decision like a verdict. We've discussed it, Dad said. And after what happened yesterday, maybe it's best if you took some space. This house doesn't need more tension. Carrie stood behind him, arms crossed, her expression carefully neutral. You mean leave, I replied flat. Not forever, Mom added too quickly. Just until things cool down. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just looked at the people I'd once thought were my foundation and nodded. Then I packed a duffel bag and walked out of the only home I'd ever known, without a word. By noon, the second blow landed. Screenshots, group chats, threads. A former coworker forwarded me a whisper thread from a private VC circle. Brilliant but unstable. Had to be removed for the project's safety. Another post. Not her first meltdown. Google her name plus AI theft. It was all fabricated, but it didn't matter. In their world, perception was currency, and I was being bankrupted. I moved into a tiny co-working space on 4th and Jackson. No windows, just rows of outdated desks and a humming fridge in the corner. But it was mine. It was quiet. And it was where I'd fight back. No rage, no panic, just keystrokes. I rewrote the final trigger. Not a bomb, an illumination. When launched, it would link every unauthorized edit, every access log, every lie, directly to public-facing profiles. No room for spin, no PR cleanup, no misunderstanding. I whispered to the empty room. You tried to erase me. Now watch what happens when I hit publish. This wasn't just a defense anymore. It was a reckoning. Monday morning. I didn't sleep, but I didn't need to. At exactly 8 a.m., the system did what I'd built it to do. Emails fired off like clockwork. No subject lines, just attachments. Logs, timestamps, access IDs. Screenshots of every unauthorized code injection. Every change traced back to Carrie's user credentials. Somewhere in a dozen inboxes, investors, legal advisors, board members, a quiet storm was starting to build. I didn't watch it unfold. I brewed coffee. I opened a book I hadn't touched in months. And then my phone rang. Mion? Brian's voice crackled through. I don't know what you triggered, but I'm seeing some wild movement. He was an old mentee, now a rising tech analyst. Months ago, I had shown him early drafts of Aegis, asking for peer feedback. Without my knowledge, he'd archived it all. Metadata, commit dates, server backups. I've got every file you ever sent me. All time-stamped, all clean. You didn't just build it first, you built it better. He didn't wait for my response. By noon, he had posted a technical blog, breaking down how Aegis was originally constructed, authorship proof line by line. I didn't have to ask. He just did it. Carrie must have seen it. Her name started dropping off the invite lists. VC chats went quiet. Then came the board summons. I wasn't invited in person, but I didn't need to be. They let me listen in remotely. Just audio, no cameras. This committee has reviewed submitted documentation and system evidence. Effective immediately, Carrie Kim is removed from project leadership. Legal review is underway. Mion Kim will be reinstated as chief system architect and recognized co-founder. There was a pause. Then one voice, maybe the chairman, said plainly, Miss Carrie Kim's silence over these infractions has undermined this company's integrity. No applause, no drama, just correction. I didn't celebrate. I just sat back, exhaled, and whispered, finally. The war was over, but healing was something else entirely. A week later, I sat on my couch, laptop open, scrolling through archived footage of that investor pitch. Carrie was there on stage, lit up by confidence and self-interest. She leaned into the mic, smiled at me just off camera, and said those words. "What can you do?" I paused the video. It used to make me nauseous. Now, it was almost laughable. She didn't know the answer then, but I did. And I'd done it. In the days since the fallout, Carrie had gone dark. No posts, no rebuttals. A few vague statements from her lawyer floated in the press, but nothing stuck. The data was clean, brutal, and immutable. One morning, I opened an envelope slipped under my new apartment door. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. My mother's. It wasn't an apology. It was a recipe card. "Thought you'd want this. You were always the one who got the crust just right." That was it. But it said more than she ever had allowed. Ronald didn't say anything. I didn't expect him to. At the next investor summit, I stood on stage. No script, no fear. Brian was in the front row, arms crossed, nodding with a quiet pride that didn't need words. A younger woman in the audience raised her hand. "What inspired you to build Aegis?" I thought for a second, then answered, "Survival, then clarity, then purpose." I didn't mention Carrie. I didn't need to. I built something that outlived theft, outran lies, outgrew revenge. After the applause faded, I walked backstage, letting the silence settle. Forgiveness was still far off. But freedom? I'd earned that. There was a time I believed keeping quiet made me stronger. That being the bigger person meant letting things slide, even when it cost me everything. But silence doesn't always mean grace. Sometimes it means being erased. Standing up wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my voice. Not just for me, but for anyone who's ever been sidelined, underestimated, or made to feel like their story didn't matter. To those watching, maybe you've been told to sit down, to stay silent, to let it go. Maybe it was at work, maybe in your own family. But let me tell you, boundaries are not aggression. And speaking up for yourself isn't betrayal. It's survival. It's healing. It's growth. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to fight for something that was already yours? What did that moment teach you about yourself and about the people around you? Let's talk in the comments. Drop a 1 if this story hit home. Or tell me what city you're watching from. I want to know who's out there listening. And hey, if you didn't vibe with this one, let me know why. I respect that. Your voice matters here. And if you want to hear more stories that dig deep, stories about real resilience, hard choices, and the quiet power of standing your ground, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because sometimes the stories that matter most are the ones we almost didn't tell.